Firth Falls in the Blue Mountains. Police using helicopters were brought in after ground crews had difficulty reaching the body. They say the man, aged 18, had been swimming in a creek at the top of the falls when he fell more than 70 metres to his death. A short time ago, Polly recovered the body, which was taken to a waiting ambulance. We'll have more information on that story as it comes to hand. Sydney detectives are tonight trying to piece together information that may explain the apparent suicides of two Australians.
The state-of-the-art Tangara is part of the Labor government's armoury in its fight to hold on to power.
We all move into the 21st century with Sydney's newest train, the Tangara.
Featuring more comfortable seating and virtually wrap-around tinted windows, the Tangara is the replacement for the old red Rattlers. 450 of the new carriages will be phased in over the next 8 years at a cost of $500 million. Tangara is the Aboriginal word for to go, but the train on show today wasn't ready to go anywhere. Tangara services won't start till early next year, just in time for the state elections. But while the new train might be a vote winner, the government's political fortunes are being jeopardised by the threat of a rail strike during the bicentennial celebrations. The Australian Railways Union is angered by the Arbitration Commission's decision to defer its ruling on the national wage case till the end of January, and is demanding the government ignore the Commission by granting the pay increase now. The Premier says the government's happy to pay an extra $6.50, but only when it's approved by the Commission, and he says the increase is not worth striking over.
Because if you work out what a day's pay is worth to the average worker, if they were involved in any stoppages, they'd lose a lot of $6.50s.
The Premier will meet union leaders during the week and is confident they'll withdraw the strike threat. Stephen Fennelly, National 9 News.
Police inquiries are underway following the death.
New Tangara super train today at the start of a $3 billion upgrading of the suburban rail system. The Tangara will replace all remaining single-decker trains in Sydney and Newcastle over the next 8 years.
Even though an election date hasn't been set, the campaign is surely underway.
Every one of you that is here today will be able to say, I was here when the Tangara was unveiled. I didn't want to get political today.
The state opposition scoffed at the exercise, pointing out that the train still wasn't operational and wouldn't be for some months. But nevertheless, the government still scored plenty of political points. The Tangara super train is the most sophisticated suburban train in the world. Tangara means to go, and it does at 130 kilometres an hour, with room for 1,000 passengers. 450 Tangaras will be running in Sydney and Newcastle by 1995 at a cost of $500 million. And the government aims to get this one on the tracks hopefully before an election next year.
But any positive political effects from the Tangara in the lead up to the election could be offset by threats of a rail strike in the new year.
Mr Unsworth says he'll meet the rail unions to try to head off the dispute, threatened over the Arbitration Commission's postponement of a decision on a $7 a week pay claim.
I think that the average transport worker is very realistic. They recognise that the government supports their claim. They recognise that the government must abide by the Arbitration Commission's decision, and in those circumstances I think we'll all just have to be patient until the end of January.
Premier Unsworth,
450 of these state-of-the-art trains will be delivered by the Newcastle construction contractors by 1995. This one will be in action in a few weeks' time. Mary Ruth Monsor, 7 National News.
The best trains in the world.
Tickets for that historic ride are still around. It cost 10 bob to get aboard. Charles Locke signed this one, so did bridge designer John Bradfield.
Well, there's a lot of nostalgia attached to the Red Rattlers, but the reality is they've outlived their usefulness.
As far as I've been concerned, you know, they've been the basis, the backstay of the whole of the bulk of Sydney's transport system, and I feel that it's a day that's got to be honoured to see the last of them honestly go.
Honestly, they'll go to Redfern Yards, where a contractor will break most up for scrap. This is where Sydney's Red Rattlers will end their days. An elephant's graveyard for 60 years of train travel. The end of the line for another chapter of Sydney's history. Mark Barler, National 9 News.
Were scrapped, Sydney's trams are back on the tracks. A new tramway was opened today in the city's south. If it's a success, we may see more introduced.
Sydney once boasted one of the world's most extensive tramways. At their peak, there was 1,500 trams in service. But the motorcar forced them off the road. The last rattled through the city in 1961. But enthusiasts at the Sydney Tramway Museum refused to forget their favourite form of transport. Today they reopened the line from their museum on the old Princess Highway at Loftus to the Royal National Park.
The operating costs are lower than buses are and much more environmentally friendly, so I think we're going to see a lot more of them in the future.
The 1.5 kilometre trip takes just 10 minutes and costs $2 each way for adults. At the moment, there's only an hourly service on Sundays and public holidays at Loftus, but it's a sign of the return of light rail, with plans on track for at least 2 other services in Sydney, one in Darling Harbour, another for Bondi Beach. Raymond Dale, National 9 News.
Ken Sutcliffe with sport is next, and Cronulla makes it 3 in a row.
Arthur Beetson's got a big smile on his face. We'll have that.